And we are back, Steeler Nation, for another great episode of the Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy. I am reporting live from my podcast studio, aka my basement and home gym. Really excited for our guest today. Like I said, man, we're really prepping for the season over at the Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy, bringing the best of the game. So make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Still a lot of news going on. Cam Heyward holding in. We'll get to that. And we have a defensive mind coming on. So really excited to knack his brain. So Shane, let's get to it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Steelers Crazy.
Aaron Smith shields. Flacco, Polamalu takes it home. Super Bowl 43. Pittsburgh might be bound for that thanks to number 43.
The sickest Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
Yes, indeed. We are excited to welcome our next guest in. He is Cody Alexander. You could find him on matchquarters.com, the host, the Talk Ball podcast, and I'm sure prep of other stuff. How are you doing today, Cody? I know you said you off air you were in Dallas. It's 90 degrees here in Pittsburgh right now, so it feels like South Florida. It feels like Texas over here, but how's everything going?
Everything's good. Everything's dead because of the heat. But yeah, we're in the end of summer, so it's just hot outside.
Understandable. So we know you're a defensive-minded guy. I love your content. Really fortunate to have you on the podcast and knack your brain. But we're going to start on the offensive side of the ball. Were you team Justin Fields or Aaron Rodgers? Obviously, the Steelers, I'm sure you followed them from afar, and it's just been kind of chaotic. And really, I think the Steelers refuse to rebuild. But what side were you on? And, we'll start on the offensive side of the ball with this podcast.
I think it's a weird marriage for Aaron Rodgers with Arthur Smith, the way that he wants to run the ball, play action, a lot of under center. Aaron Rodgers is very much a visual quarterback. He wants to be in the gun. He wants to see everything, doesn't want to have a lot of motion, wants to throw the ball, obviously. So I just thought it was an interesting marriage. I think for the Steelers, like you said, they don't want to actually go through a rebuild. They're trying to catch lightning on probably the last year that Aaron Rodgers plays. He can manage that offense. Arthur Smith for a year can probably figure it out. And I think too, it's in their mind, if it's a total crash and burn moment, then maybe we can figure something out next year earlier in the draft. But to me, I think you just replace DK Metcalf for George Pickens is pretty much a flip. They're both vertical receivers. They're both go ball guys. So to me, I was like, it really was a weird marriage where I think Justin Fields, you can do a lot of boot action with him. He can throw the ball deep, but basically, you can kind of use his legs in a run heavy system and really lean into the fact that you have one of the better defenses in the NFL.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I was honestly never a big Justin Fields guy. I think that it was highway robbery what the Jets gave him. I think he's still unproven. Does he show flashes? Yes. Is he great athletic? But, there's only a few elite quarterbacks in the NFL, and I just don't think he falls under that umbrella. What did defenses do to, slow down Stimmy Aaron Rodgers early in the season?
I think for him, because there's just a lack of motion, that they can really lean into coverage disguise. They can kind of force him to throw the ball into certain spots by leveraging coverage. They can blitz him. I thought that a lot of times teams that were able to kind of drop out different players. I thought Mike McDonald had one of the better game plans against him for the Seahawks, where he thinks like, okay, they're loaded up. I'm going to have a hot read here. Then they drop the guy into that area. So I think that the reason he does not want motion. And I think that style of play offensively has finally gotten to the point where you can't survive offensively if you're just staying in one static alignment. Defenses are going to be able to hold their disguise. They're going to be able to do a bunch of different things like post snap, where you're going to have to go through it, where his brain pre-snap is pretty much mitigated.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, so we'll get to the defensive side of the ball now. Obviously, a lot of offseason moves. Minka Fitzpatrick, I would say that he's been declining the past 2 seasons. Great guy on and off the field, obviously, but I think his best years are behind him. I think we could agree. Talk about the Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith. What do you think Ramsey still has left in the tank, and do you think that the Steelers won that trade?
I think that the Steelers won the trade because corner is more valuable. I think like overall, it's on paper, it's pretty much a wash.
Yeah.
I think that you just traded one kind of fading superstar for another, but you have a premium position at corner as whereas safety is more or less not a premium position. So I think like in the grand scape of things, my only concern here is I just don't want Joey Porter's development to be hindered because you also have Slay. When it first happened, I really looked at it and I was like, okay, well, who's the odd man out? Because somebody's going to have to sit when they're in base. And so I think to me, that's one of the things where you got to be careful as the Steelers to really make sure that you're handling that situation right. Because what you don't want is like, look, Slay's an ego guy. And he has, and not in necessarily a bad way. I'm not saying he's disruptive, but he considers himself one of the better corners. He'll tell you that. If you've ever watched him on social media, he'll tell you that. So to me, it was a little bit of an odd where you also went after Darius Slay. But in the grand scheme of things, what they're doing on defense, playing a lot more zone. They're not playing a ton of man. You can put Joey Porter to the boundary. You can allow him to lock up on any kind of receiver that you want. And then you have two really good zone corners at their age in Slay and Ramsey. And you can use Ramsey as a leveraging tool in the nickel. So I thought to me, it's a much better fit for the Steelers overall. Now you get also, we haven't even talked about Jonnu Smith, where now you get a second tight end and now you can run a lot of your 12 personnel stuff.
Yeah, and I think the Steelers have like 13 tight ends at this point, but I think that Arthur Smith, he has so many different ways that he lines people up, and I think that you don't pay too much attention to what it says on the depth chart because I think that you're going to see a lot of different formations on the offensive side of the ball. So talk about Darius Slay again. Just how much gas do these guys have left in the tank? I always think about it. The locker room, especially the Pittsburgh Steelers, as we like to stay here. The standard is the standard, although recently it hasn't been the standard of what we're used to, but not only a good locker room guy, but do you think that he could still contribute on the field?
Yes. And I think because of the way the Steelers are playing now, I think if this was 5 years ago and we're basically playing cover one at a high rate, then I think no. That's where the corner market, you have to be really careful with when you see a younger corner that's starting to get older, but he's been man dominant. Get off. We don't want him on our team because he's going to fall off a cliff because a lot of those guys can't play zone. Zone corners tend to last a little bit longer or can play into their 30s because they're a vision break and they're not necessarily that track meet guy, right? Where I'm essentially running in a track meet every single game. I'm on ball, meaning I'm pressing. That's a physical matchup. You have to be elite to be able to do that. The guys that are able to play in their 30s are able to transition into playing more zone. We saw this with Patrick Peterson, where he was really a man corner early, transitioned to more of a zone corner, and then was able to play a little bit of safety towards the end of his career. And I think Jalen Ramsey will probably follow that same arc where you play more of a post-safety situation, longer or a deep safety. But to me, Slay, I think, can still play. I still think he has gas in the tank, and especially with the way the Steelers are playing defense now.
Yeah, I have to agree. And we couldn't go, this podcast might air later this week, so hopefully it is something happens. But let's talk about Cam Heyward. And I'll just give my two takes on it. I love Cam. I always say it, the heart and soul of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But obviously he's aging. I just think that at this point, like, I get that, guys, it's an entertainment, it's a business. They make a lot of money off these guys. Does he deserve it? Of course. But my whole thing was, it's just the timing of it was terrible. And that's where I kind of lose the respect. Do I think that Cam Heyward, deserves his money and be up there with the top tier guys? Of course. But I also think that the timing right before the season, everyone was worried about the TJ Watt situation. We got that handled and we're going into training camp camp, and I'm like, all right, no drama. And then you have this, and if that was something, he just signed a new contract. If he wasn't happy, then his agent or whoever represents him should have had something in there to say, hey, if I have an All-Pro year, then let's come back to the table, not a handshake deal. And you never know what goes on behind closed doors. And we all love Cam, but at the end of the day, the Steelers want to win, and I just think giving him more money, Boswell on the other end as well, who's basically getting peanuts at this point, I think that he deserves it more right now than Cam, just because where they're at the trajectory of their careers right now. But just kind of give your 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I think it's was a little bit interesting to me too. I mean, here we are going into year 14. I know you were an all-pro, but we know once you get into that 12, 13, 14, 15 year, I mean, is he going to be like Calais Campbell where he plays all the way up until he's 40, or is he going to be but even then Calais Campbell is not getting top market money. I think Heyward has played at such a high level for so long, but at the end of the day, like you said, the Steelers are not trying to do a rebuild. So you're going to have to do essentially a soft rebuild in the way that we're going to have to start picking up some different players and start paying guys and then kind of fading out guys on the other side. That's where you hope Derek Harmon can essentially kind of eat up a little bit of those reps with Cam and Hayward. And then obviously I think Benton is one of the better noses in the NFL and probably doesn't get a lot of credit just because he plays nose. He's not a 3 technique. Those tend to get to be where the money is. So to me, I'm with you. I thought it was a little bit awkward situation of where you basically wait till TJ gets paid and then it's like, hey, I'm going into year 14, but I want a little bit more money, even though I just signed a contract the previous year. It's a little awkward, and really the Steelers are not going to give him even more money this late in his career.
Yeah, and this is the Steeler way. They do cave, and honestly, if I'm being honest, I think that will eventually cave because that's just how the Steelers operate. I think at the end of the day, it's like, hey, he said it himself when they were recruiting Aaron Rodgers. You either want to be a Pittsburgh Steeler or you don't. Like, let's be honest. If it's talking, a normal person, that makes an honest living, $15 million. Like, come on, man, the guy's made his money in his career. Like, people try to compare that. I see on Twitter X, whatever we call it now. They're like, well, you never asked for a raise. Yes, but I'm not making $15 million a year, and trying to win a Super Bowl when your window is very short. I mean, let's be honest. TJ Watt isn't getting in. The defensive side of the ball is old. Let's just call it how it is. You have these young guys like Harmon that are coming in, thankfully. But again, the verdict's still out on them because we haven't seen them play meaningful football yet. But overall, I just think if I could just sum it up, I love Cam, everything that he does on and off the field. And I get that, but we're talking about strictly business here, and it's a business at the end of the day. And I just think giving him that extra money just because he feels he deserves it, it's just, at this point, it's just, you either want to win or not. I mean, he's 1-8 in the playoffs, 2-year window, I say. And like I said, Aaron Rodgers, you've seen it with Tom Brady. Oh, it's my last year. I think if the Steelers make a deep playoff run, there could be a chance that Aaron Rodgers comes back for one more season. I'd never close the door on that. One more thing, and then you could tell all the people where they can find you and what you got coming up this football season. AFC pecking order. You have the Ravens, the Bengals, the Browns, Steelers. Obviously, everyone's just going to call it out is the Ravens on paper look like the real deal. I think that they're a Super Bowl contender. But where do you see, the Steelers and the Bengals and Browns? Obviously, the AFC as a whole. It's just insane to look about how it changed with a lot of the quarterbacks coming over. Like, it's just like, I mean, you got to get through Buffalo, Kansas City. I mean, we used to just worry about the Chiefs. Now it's like you have all the Chargers, the Broncos even. Shout out Bo Nix. But it's great. I think it's great for the sport, and obviously I'm an AFC guy. So just kind of talk about the pecking order, and then we'll end. You could tell the people and our viewers where they can find your work and what you have coming up.
I think you're right when you talk about the Ravens being kind of the kings of the North. To me, the Bengals are a little bit of an anomaly. They're going to be really good on offense. We have no idea how good they're going to be on defense. I don't think it's going to be great. I don't think it's going to be any better than it was. They're going to simplify things. They really took a more collegiate approach where they're like, look, we're going to try and score 40 points a game. We may give up 30, but at least, we're going to stay on top as long as everybody stays healthy. But that is a total crash and burn situation. So I think really, to me, the Steelers, with how well that defense is going to be able to play, I think Rodgers can still manage an offense. They look like they're probably going to be in that fight for that second place. And you kind of mentioned it. I mean, the AFC, the Patriots look like they might be good. Right. The Jets, I don't think the Jets are going to be any good with all that, with everything new, but Miami could surprise. But, so you have Buffalo and you have the Patriots. You go to the South, Tennessee isn't any good. The Colts don't have a quarterback. Jacksonville could be, but we have no idea what that defense is going to be in Houston. I think really the AFC West is the one that is the most interesting, where you did have 3 playoff teams. So if I'm Steelers and I'm looking who do we have to pick off? We are probably going to have to stay in line with what's going on with the AFC West and at least stay within touching distance with the Ravens, because if we can do that, then we know that we're going to be able to position ourselves in order to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be interesting, to say the least. And even if the, Bengals and Browns aren't the best, you could throw the records out of the window. AFC North, these guys, towards the end of the season, they're planning to knock these teams out of the playoffs. So that's another thing. I mean, that's really anyone, but AFC North, like I try and stay away from betting from them, because, those guys are playing, just for, the rivalry's sake. But hey, really appreciate your time and expertise. Why don't you tell our viewers what you have coming up this football season and where they can find you at?
Yeah, so you can find everything at matchquarters.com. If you're into defense at all, or just want to learn how modern NFL and really modern Power 4 college defenses are playing, go to matchquarters.com. I will obviously be covering the NFL all season and some of the P4 teams. I release a long form article on Monday. You'll get a clinic on Friday. And then I have the Let's Talk Ball podcast on Wednesday. I've got other stuff going on too. You can follow me socially on X at @the_coach_A, and then Match Quarters really wherever you social.
Hey, well, we really appreciate your stuff. Can't wait to see what you got planned this season, and we'll have to do it again. Thank you, Cody.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Take care. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, one of the highest paid defenses, the Steelers, got to put up or shut up this year. A lot of draft guys, Harmon, I really think that he's going to be, big deal. But they got to do something, and the AFC isn't getting any easier. We just talked about it. 10 the segment. It's going to be interesting, to say the least. I mean, when you have Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, it's going to be interesting, but to really see how this defense plays out, you have a lot of these veteran guys that's been around the block, Slay, Super Bowl champion. So it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out. So none to say the less, we'll be here all season on the Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy. We'll be bringing on great guests. We have some special announcements coming up, so make sure you follow all of our socials at Sick Pod Steelers. Wherever, you get your content, we're going to be cranking out the best in the game. So we really appreciate you guys for hanging with us. Until next time, JY, Mike, the Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy. Shane, take it to the end zone.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Steelers Crazy on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.